Travis Wayne Goodsell. I'm Mormon, born and raised. And so I'm going to let you know about my history. Growing up Mormon. It'll have to be shortened, obviously. I was born in Berkeley, Alameda County, California hospital. My parents lived in Oakland in an apartment while my dad was going to Berkeley. My mom says that I was a very happy kid, enjoyed life, and then Todd came along and he had colic. So my mom gave him her full attention as I was sat in front of the TV to be educated by Sesame Street. And I associated myself more with Ernie than with Bert, though my brother had more of a circular face like Ernie, whereas I have more of the oval-shaped face like Bert. Our personalities ended up being in such a manner, as my brother related more to Ernie, or Bert, and I related more to Ernie. And so I learned very early that those who educate us are the ones who we tend to emulate, depending on who we grow an attachment to. And so I dance myself to sleep. And have written about the little yellow rubber ducky because of that. Everybody loved my stories on the little yellow rubber ducky. But my mom says that something happened after Todd's birth, and I was no longer the happy kid anymore. And it seems strange that she can't put two and two together, that I lost all my firstborn birthright blessing son attention. And so I was all by myself, to be educated by TV, and then eventually VHS movies, which would then turn into DVD movies, as well as music for my education. Still haven't quite figured out what a lady red light is. Yes, I know. When we moved to Michigan, and I started swimming lessons. Well, my mom put me in swimming lessons because as a girl, she was out swimming in the California Ocean and got carried away by the tide, and my grandpa had to swim out to save her. And so she made it mandatory that we as children learned how to swim because of her experience in life. But I could never learn how to breathe underwater. Born in Pisces, I was instead unbreakable. Like Bruce Willis, whose kryptonite is being underwater. Love the rain, I love a rainy night. I love a rainy night. But I can't breathe in the water. And had a traumatic experience one swimming lesson day. It was also during swimming lessons where I noticed that my armpits were sweating. Eventually I would grow hair. But another trauma in my early life. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the babysitter in Oakland. My parents would get babysitters for me. And my dad had one day found that she had hid cigarettes in the toilet tank. And that may be the reason why I have the breathing problem that I do, is because of the exposure to her cigarette smoke, which she may have likely breathed into me as a baby. And so yeah, another tragedy trauma in kindergarten in Michigan is walking to school with Beth, and a couple of older kids coming up behind and sexually molesting Beth as I stand in shocking fright, frozen with fear. And so ever since that, I've always had a soft spot for women. And even though once my hair started growing in and I started having different feelings for women, there's still that background of having a soft spot for women. And too often women took advantage of that. As I became the target for their revenge of the guys who hurt them. But women have dictated the course of my life, as women in positions of authority and trust have either for good or bad determined the course of my life. My mother for bad, as I had to learn to be a rebel, a resistance fighter against my mom trying to take away my agency as a kid and imposing very harsh orders that I just had to defy. Say, no, I will not let you do this to me. And then Mrs. Fiskin in 5th grade, who shocked and horrified me by giving me an F on my Idaho state report. Idaho was my choice from the beginning, as she told the class that nobody is allowed to do California, because that was the state we were in. So we had to pick another state, and nobody else knew that Idaho even existed, so it was clear sailing for me to get that one. And we had to do a report, and we did a some kind of thing that created the topography map of Idaho, and all things Idaho for that period of time, and had inside access to papers from Idaho, thanks to my grandparents on my dad's side. My grandmother going to all of the different tourist sites to collect the materials for me and then mailed them off. Because you see, kids, back in our day, we had this thing called slow mail, snail mail. And spent literally hours, days, working on that report. And my parents fought for me to get it up to a C, as I saw that she tried to get it to a D minus and then a C minus. But unbelievable. You know, I lost all interest in being at school because of that F. After spending so much work and effort into it, into something that I enjoyed, because I would go on to go to Rick's rather than BYU. And she just utterly destroyed me for the course of my life. As my other siblings pursued AP classes to get the higher grade point average, I said, no, why bother? What good is it? If people can just assign an F for all the work I put into something, and something that I love, what does it all matter? And so we can all thank Mrs. Fiskin for that. But there are others who were good influences in my life. When I was being interviewed to become an Eagle Scout, one of the guys asked me, so do you see yourself being involved with the scouting program after receiving your Eagle? And I was about to say an immediate yes. Oh yeah, definitely. I'll probably have boys when I get married, and I'll put them through the Boy Scout program, blah blah blah. But then all of a sudden, a vision swept through my mind. And a voice said, no, you will not have this opportunity. You will not be able to put your boy through Boy Scouts. And so I told him the truth, based on a futuristic vision that I had. I didn't tell him I had a futuristic vision. I just said, no, I don't see myself being involved in scouting after this. I didn't go into explanations. I just said I don't see it because I saw something else. And so, after a very long discussion among the three of them, while I sat outside in the hallway, they came out, and the woman in the committee told how they were not wanting to give it to me, but the woman said that she told the guys in the committee that, well, we do teach them to be honest. So I became an Eagle Scout because I was honest. And as it turns out, sure enough, I had a boy, and I never got him into Boy Scouts, which is another negative impact that women have had in my life. The woman formerly called my first wife. And I know that women who are looking for a guy to date, they want to know how they treat their mother, and if they've been previously married, how they treated their wife, and how they talk about their wife. And I know that psychologists say that you're not supposed to talk bad about your wife in front of the kids. But what do you do when it's the wife who was abusive to me in the presence of our children? I mean, she just tried every trick in the book to get me to divorce her. And that was her plan. That she would claim victim because I divorced her, and I wouldn't do it. She was forced to abandon our marriage and kidnap the kids. But the rules or the laws in America, and thus in Utah, are such that there's no such thing as kidnapping kids from a parent. But nobody bothered to tell me that, as everybody helped her in this process. My mom said that children belong with their mother. My dad told her, just go, I'll take care of this. The bishop, who laughed about how he exposed himself to little children, so that's why I call him Lester the child molester Nielsen, cursed me. You know, like that did any good. But nonetheless, he cursed me, blaming the victim. The cops laughed at me because I couldn't control my woman. Governor Huntsman, through their appointed designated person to handle such complaints, told me to conform and comply with Canada over an American citizen. And Judges Benson and Kimball denied and dismissed my petition for a redress of grievance. Because I was born and raised Mormon, we have scriptures. We have scriptures that are not contained in the Bible. And unbeknownst to Christians, there are scriptures not contained in the Bible. Yet nonetheless, Christians don't believe in anything that's not in the Bible. And for some reason, Mormons don't believe anything that's not contained in their quad. A quad, we have a quad, and we need no more quad. But growing up Mormon, learning from Joseph Smith, I knew it was all about new scripture coming forth. The search for other scriptures. The Doctrine and Covenants passage that talks about how the Apocrypha doesn't need to be retranslated, that it's good enough. And then wondering, well, where's the Apocrypha? I can't find it. Is it in the Old Testament? But my dad had a Catholic Bible with the Apocrypha in it. And so I would read through those apocryphal stories that were not contained in our quad. And came across in the book of Daniel the story of Bel. Not Bel and the dragon. They're two separate stories. But one about Bel, where King Nebuchadnezzar shows Daniel that his God is true because the food goes missing every morning. Because each night the king would put out offerings to Bel, the statue that's in the Holy of Holies, and in the morning when he'd come back, food would be eaten. So he automatically assumed that Bel is real and that his offerings were accepted by Bel and that Bel was watching out for him and blessing his life. And so he was trying to prove to Daniel that Daniel's God Yah, which is not the unseen God. That's an anachronism, guys. Because Eva Vasilevska, my anthropology of the ancient Middle East, had published one of her books that showed an inscription of Yah next to Bel. They were brothers, and it was clear that they were depicted as anthropomorphic deities, as certain appendages were hanging down. And I hadn't taken her class at that point, but obviously. But and so Daniel, being the wise Jewish boy that he was, said, "Hey, well, let's try this again. I'm going to put this powder all over the ground, and then we'll come back in the morning." So Daniel puts out the powder, the king presents the offerings, and then the king shuts the door, locks it, and then seals it for an extra seal to make sure that nobody can get in. And in the morning he breaks the seal, unlocks the door, opens it up, and the food is gone again. Oh, see, Daniel? He is the true God of gods. And Daniel says, then what are these footprints on the ground? They followed the footprints. There was a secret passage in the Holy of Holies. They followed the tunnel, and it led to the tents of the families of the priests. It was the priests who were deceiving the king into letting him believe that the god Bel was a true god and accepting of the offerings, when the priests were merely feeding their families. Which, that in and of itself is not the evil that they did, because that's the tradition. When you give offerings to the temple to be presented before the god, it's the priests and their families that eat of those offerings. But it was the fact that they deceived the king in that process, and so the king had them assassinated, murdered, executed, deceased, terminated. They will not be back. And so that story impacted my life. And so as I'm in my teenage years, I'm being exposed to born-again Christians there in Southern California, and they're telling me that the church is evil and that the church is wrong, and that I can't drink coffee. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like the smell of coffee. I was tricked into taking a coffee candy back in grade school in Placentia, and I didn't even like the taste. So yeah, I'm not concerned that I don't get to drink coffee. It's not an issue with me. The concept of caffeine was not an issue back then in the 80s. At least not in Southern California. It may have been in Utah, but not in Southern California. Except, well, no, there was some kind of knowledge of it later in high school. Because I remember, well, no, that was actually in childhood too. There was a a baseball practice or game. Yeah, it was a game. And my dad had shown up for the game, and at the end of the game, the coach handed out soda pop in cans. And all there was Coke. And so I took it, but there was apprehension of taking it. My grandpa, my dad's father, was a Coke drinker back in the days when it had cocaine, and thus named Coca-Cola. But he continued to drink it the rest of his life, even when they took out the cocaine. But I remember being hesitant and taking a taste of it and not liking the taste. It was just the carbonation. I've since grown to be fine with it. I prefer Mountain Dew, though. Original, none of that extra blue and red and whatever stuff. So that's another thing about me, is that once something is the way I like it, I don't want it changed. I want to keep it. And so it's frustrating in the fashion community that wants to keep evolving our clothing styles when Levi's 505 jeans are exactly what I like. They have the zipper, and then they have the button. My mom would buy other types of jeans, with a snap or with the buttons for the fly. No. No, get that crap away from me. I want what I want. I like what I like. I don't want to be told I can't have it anymore because it's no longer made. Fortunately, Levi's still makes my jeans. But Wrangler, get the hell away from me. And so, yeah, I get frustrated with all these updates from Windows and updates for apps. I got it. It works. I like it. Stay away from it. Don't mess it up. And Windows, it's just so frustrating. So, and so, yeah, when I was working an all-nighter trying to finish what took a lot longer than I thought it would, the science fair project, which I did on birds on telephone wires. I bought myself a couple of 6-packs of Mountain Dew. So somewhere, somehow, I had been informed that caffeine was bad for you, but it doesn't produce the effects that National Geographic did an article on. As long as it's not the Mountain Mist, if you're familiar with the Mountain Mist knockoff brand, drinking a lot of Mountain Mist, I do get those caffeine headaches. But the regular stuff, no. So I can get drunk on Mountain Dew, and 3 days later, nothing. I can go months without Mountain Dew. I can quit. I can quit anytime I want. Literally, I can. It's not an issue. I can drink it for as long as I want, and I can quit cold turkey. But I don't choose to quit cold turkey, but there are certain financial restrictions on occasion that keep me from drinking it on a regular basis like I would like. But I've realized it's no big deal. I don't have to sell my soul in order to get a Mountain Dew. There is no addiction. And so the attachment to women that I had, that I talked about, was enhanced by my own mother, as she didn't realize that that's what she was doing. Because as little kids in Placentia, my mom would get the Sears catalog. And so when she got the new one, she would take the old one, set it out on the kitchen table for us, and we would work on collages, cutting out the pictures and putting them on paper. And that got me looking through the Sears catalog, and then I would get into the women's fashion, even the women's underwear. What is this? I have never seen such things. So much skin. My armpits are sweating. But yeah, I desired to be a woman's fashion designer, not even knowing that such a job and career field was available for me. As we were given career aptitude tests in grade school so that we can see what career field we were desiring to go into and what we were good at, janitor being one of them. But for me, they all tested on the lower end. There was nothing that stood out, nothing that showed that I was interested in anything or good at anything. And so what is a boy to do? So I've already been devastated by Mrs. Fiskin, that I have no desire to be at school, which is why I figured out the little secret to education. Just find a reference book. That's it. That's all you need. And if they don't have a reference book, then you'll have to make one yourself. You'll have to be the expert in that particular field that doesn't have a reference book. And so thus why I went into ancient languages, is because I wanted to know how Joseph Smith translated the King Follett Discourse, talking about the biblical Hebrew text being incorrectly translated. Not just the King James Version, the biblical Hebrew text mistranslated. As well as the Book of Abraham with the facsimiles. I asked my mom, well, how did he translate this? What does it say? And she says, oh, that's higher learning for adults. It was unacceptable to me. I was a child born in privilege. How dare you tell me I'm not supposed to know? And so, yes, that's why I went into that career field when it was presented to me as an opportunity. I took it and found out that, sure enough, Joseph Smith is right. And sure enough, Joseph Smith is a translator of the King Follett Discourse concerning Hebrew and Egyptian. Notice no Book of Mormon involved. Although I did find that, hey, these Zenock and Zenos, who talked about prophecies of the Messiah, I found them in the Egyptian documents. Nobody was impressed in Mormonism. Didn't believe me or didn't care. I don't know which, but they all were they were shocked. For some weird reason, there is a horrible taboo, as if it were forbidden knowledge, to go into Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. And yet, for me, the church is true. Joseph Smith is a true prophet, and he's a translator. And so all I need to do is learn Hebrew and Egyptian, and I'll find out what my mom says I can't find out because I'm not old enough. And sure enough, I did. Deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, because nobody else had deciphered it. Not even William Foxwell Albright whose decipherment, oh my God, how is he acknowledged as a scholar? I will never know. I mean, the paper that I did showing all the errors in his decipherment, literally dozens of errors that show that there's no way he could be correct, that his theory needs to be thrown away, burned, and never brought up again. It's just wrong on so many levels. And so I walk in, boom, there it is. Here you go. Oh, I'm not a doctor, which is doctorate, not the medical doctor. So this is part one, I guess, since the door's knocking.